And welcome to another edition of the Sidelines Past, episode 5. I'm here with, of course, RJ Gardner, senior writer at Sidelines, and Bill Zeoli, Sidelines analyst, who's joining us as a guest panelist this week. I'm, of course, Chris Courtney. I am the sports editor at Sidelines. This week we're going to be discussing DeflateGate, and it is pretty much the biggest news in sports right now, even kind of overshadowing the NBA playoffs and everything that's happening in Major League Baseball right now. It's crazy how much of an influence football has even during the off season. But it's big news, and it has some kind of potentially far-reaching ramifications for the New England Patriots. So we'll dive right into it, gentlemen. I'll start with you, RJ, and then you, Bill. I guess with the NFL coming down with their punishment on New England, do you guys agree with the punishment levied by the NFL? And I guess if you do, explain why, and if you don't, tell us why as well.
It's an interesting thing because I can kind of see it both ways, really. Should there have been a punishment because the report shows that there was at least some culpability in there being deflated footballs? Yes. Should the Patriots have lost a first-round pick, been fined $1 million, lost a fourth-round pick? I don't necessarily think so, for the sole fact that it looks like they were pretty involved in the investigation process. They, allowed the investigators access to their employees and everything like that. Where I think, Brady is a different piece of the puzzle, because I think his suspension is a little more warranted, because I think there was more apprehension and a less willingness to comply with the investigation. And I don't think that Brady's necessarily getting punished for the act itself, but rather the less forthright nature he had during the investigative process.
Bill, your thoughts?
Off of what RJ said, I think a punishment definitely should have been handed down in this case, but as for the severity of it and the harshness of it, being objective as I can, and I take that very seriously, I don't agree with the harshness of it. Like RJ said, the Patriots complied with, being cooperative when it first came out pre-Super Bowl and even after the Super Bowl, and basically, the Ted Wells report saying that, more probable than not, and don't really have any, smoking gun, if you will. I don't know how you can suspend someone 4 games and then take away 2 draft picks. I mean, the money doesn't really matter in this case, I don't feel like, but to suspend a guy, Brady, for 4 games for not handing over his cell phone and then docking the team 2 picks, basically because of that, I don't really agree with that. But I feel like Brady definitely, I guess, for not handing over the cell phone, should I got at least a fine, and that's pretty much it.
Right, and I guess in this situation, it is kind of interesting. You look at what actually happened in the case, and it's deflating footballs, and I mean, in the whole grand scheme of things, Bountygate was a far more egregious infraction when you're talking about the New Orleans Saints and that whole situation that unfolded a few years ago. Spygate, even you could argue that that was a little bit more egregious. Another incident that the Patriots were involved in. This seems, in the whole grand scheme of things, when you look at what actually happened during the AFC Championship game last year, the impact on the game itself, really minimal, and not something that really had much of an impact at all on the game, but it appears as if, in some ways, obviously, the NFL is going to be very protective of the integrity of the game of football. That's kind of their duty. And you ask anybody probably in the NFL office, that's probably their job one, is to uphold the integrity of the game. But more so than that, you look at the penalty, handed down by the NFL to the New England Patriots, and it does seem in this case that kind of the lack of cooperation in some aspects of the investigation kind of far outweighs whatever penalty there was. It's kind of like when you look at the NCAA and some of the investigations they have had in certain things. The things that they might be investigating are relatively minor compared to these institutions actually lying to the NCAA or just people that are kind of in positions of authority. Do you guys agree that is kind of where DeflateGate is kind of veering at this point? That I feel like people have lost sight of necessarily the penalty and are focusing now more on maybe what the Patriots did or did not do in the process of the investigation. Do you guys agree with that at all, or I guess what is your guys' impressions of that? Go ahead, Bill. You first.
I think that in the public eye, it's not really about the deflation of footballs, but how the Patriots are labeled in the past. I mean, they've gotten labeled as cheaters, Belichick, with Spygate and all that, and a lot of people, they're like strike two about this, and that they've had a past, and they'll do what they need to do to win football games. That's what the Patriots organization is all about, is winning football games. And in the public eye, from everybody, fans of the other 31 teams in the league, that's what they are. They do what they take to win. And with the NFL case, they've had a history of bad, decision making when it comes to handing down punishment with other cases. I don't really know if, that's another subject for Bountygate and Ray Rice and all that, but, I mean, they've gotten overturned. And, this is, in my opinion, that just showing that, they are the law. They obviously are the NFL. They make the rules and they hand down the punishments. And, they're just showing that more here.
Yeah, I think with this investigation, I mean, playing football in college, as an offensive lineman, my roommate in college was the quarterback. I know all those guys. They're particular about the way the football feels, and some guys like them, fresh out of the box. Some guys like them with a little wear and tear. Some guys like them with a little more air, a little less air. There's always a margin of error. There's a feel, based on, years of playing the game. I don't see it, the act of deflating a football, as egregious necessarily as what that means towards the integrity of the game. And you have a franchise like the Patriots. I think that's where maybe the NFL got a little overzealous with this. Something that they have a history of is, I mean, let's face the facts. The NFL doesn't manage investigations well, and sometimes they act too harshly with the information. It's something that I think needs to change. I don't necessarily disagree with the way it was handled. I disagree with the way that the Wells report was interpreted at the back end.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing, is that the Wells report does leave so much kind of open for interpretation.
There's a lot of ambiguity there.
Exactly, and I think that's where a lot of people's anger stems from, is the fact that there isn't much in the report that is very definitive. There's a lot of people kind of assuming Ted Wells, and not to come down on Ted Wells. I think he did probably the best job he could possibly do in this situation. But when you don't have kind of the hard facts, that the black and white things that you are seeking in an investigation, it is tough. It is really tough to be able to stand behind. If you're the NFL, and Ted Wells has no part in this punishment that is being levied, but it's hard if you're the NFL, if you employed Ted Wells to kind of launch this investigation, and then you have him complete it, and then you receive what he gives you. It's really, really difficult for me to see the kind of the validity of the punishment. I mean, you look at Brady serving 4-game suspension. Really, in the grand scheme of things, it probably isn't a huge deal. We'll kind of get into that in a little bit, but the picks and the fine and those types of things for the Patriots, I think it kind of crosses, that doesn't cross the line as far as morally or anything, but it's a little bit heavy-handed as far as that goes. And so, I guess my question for you guys is, considering everything that's in the investigation and considering kind of the precedent for these types of things in the past with the league, handing out big-time suspensions, Do you guys think that that the Patriots have and Tom Brady have a case for an appeal? And if that happens, I guess what do you expect to kind of occur if they are granted an appeal?
You know, the appeal process in the NFL it's an interesting process because I think within the NFL confines itself, Brady and the Patriots really don't have a whole lot of recourse. His suspension might be cut down from 4 games to 2 games, but he's still going to be serving a suspension. If Brady wants real recourse, this needs to play out in the actual courts, in a civil court regarding contract law and what the NFL's actual power is on this matter and how far-reaching they can be. That's where they'd have the most success because the NFL is going to, you know, they do it all the time with suspensions. They lessen the fine to save face.
Yeah, I definitely think they have a legitimate case. I mean, like you said, Chris, like it doesn't show actual evidence. The outcome of their report is more probable than not. I don't know how you can suspend someone for saying, we can't find that he did it, but we think he did. It's hard there. And the Patriots actually today released a whole entire website, a WordPress website, picking and showing every detail of the report and basically rebuttaling it, showing, nope, this is wrong. You guys are misstating everything you've said, and this is actually what happened. And like the NFL actually rejected Walt Anderson, the head referee's recollection of what happened. So that's another thing to baffle with, and it's like RJ said, Brady. I think his appeal might get reduced on the actual appeal to the NFL to 2 or maybe even 1 game. But if he wants to play at all, he lawyered up for a reason, and it's with the same lawyer that got Vilma's case thrown out, that he could potentially suit up opening night.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's really interesting is if with the appeal, if that's what the Patriots are granted, if they're granted an appeal and they get neutral arbitration, I've heard a number of people on talk radio and online and on TV talking about this. If they receive neutral arbitration and they get a favorable ruling that overturns kind of a lot of the NFL's punishment that they handed out, that can mean some serious things for Roger Goodell. Many people think that could cost Roger Goodell his job as NFL commissioner. I guess evaluating that aspect of things, do you think that is fair for someone to, or for a neutral arbiter to overturn the decision, then maybe in fact have that decision impact Roger Goodell's standing within the NFL? Do you guys think that is fair, or do you think that is almost even more heavy-handed in kind of the opposite direction? Bill first, then RJ.
I don't think it's unfair, but I don't think it's. I mean, it'll be a tough tree to climb, because it's Roger Goodell here. He's been there for a while, but going back to the AFC Championship game, there was a letter to the Patriots from an executive vice president, or I forget who it was, that's saying, like, hey, we know about, or the Colts sent an email to the NFL saying, hey, we knew about there's something fishy going on with the balls, and then Roger Goodell coming out publicly saying that he knew nothing. I just find that absolutely absurd. And then him handling the Ray Rice case, dragging an unconscious woman out of an elevator, and he's only getting 2 games. It really says something about his integrity. I mean, what does he think happened? You know what I mean? And in this point on this case, it's just like he's showing that it doesn't matter who you are. You could be the face of the franchise or the third-string quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, in any franchise, that, he's going to show that he's got the power, and he'll do whatever it takes to make sure the integrity of the league is maintained.
Yeah, I think with Roger Goodell, I think even if an independent arbiter were to come in and overturn some of these, these findings and kind of be more specific as to as to what the parameters of the punishment should be. I'm not 100% sure that Roger Goodell's really in the hot seat. I think the whole domestic violence thing was a much bigger spotlight for him, and he was able to kind of take the right steps to. Obviously, he admitted that the way he handled the whole situation was wrong. That's huge. That's the one thing about Goodell, and I think that's one of the things that the owners really like is Goodell's gonna overstep those bounds a little bit, but then that gives all the NFL owners a great scapegoat for when things like this happen. That's not necessarily a bad thing when you're the NFL, because number one, Goodell is really good for the brand. I mean, look at what the NFL is making. The owners love that. Plus, he puts his foot in his mouth sometimes and kind of overreacts. That's not necessarily a bad thing because that takes all the pressure off your owners when the questions are at the podium.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill. Yeah, you got something to say?
Yeah, and just real quick, and like RJ said, like he does do other stuff, obviously outside of league rules and punishments for the league. That's very good for the league, and you can't look away that. And what he's done is collective with the owners that they've built a brand that look, we're talking about the NFL in May when the NBA and NHL playoffs are going on, so he's making it bigger all the time, no matter what it is. It could be good, it could be bad. It's a win-win for him, and for that, you just can't look past that.
No, it's true. I guess my only point for the whole thing is with Goodell, part of me wonders with some of these things, and say things got overruled at a certain point, you gotta. As good as he has been in some respects for the NFL, you've got to look at kind of also, the NFL brand kind of carries itself in a lot of ways, and has he done more to kind of tarnish that brand over his tenure as commissioner compared to maybe commissioners of the past? Obviously, it's a different era. With internet being what it is and social media being what it is. Everything that all the dirty laundry out there for the NFL is going to get aired, and it's going to be a much more public scene. So certainly, maybe there's a little bit of a benefit of the doubt there, but part of me does wonder whether or not he is kind of fit for this position in some ways because of the way that he has overstepped himself or as far as his punishment or lack thereof punishment. When you look at the Ray Rice situation, initially at least, it makes you wonder whether or not he is really kind of in tune with what is going on with his league and things like that. We could probably talk about just Goodell's viability as commissioner all evening, but I'll move on to the next part, which is a lot of people kind of maybe debating whether or not DeflateGate tarnishes Tom Brady's legacy, and the fact that you combine DeflateGate with Spygate. Do those two things kind of, when you put them all together, does it marginalize or diminish the accomplishments of the Patriots, in your opinion, over the past several years? I'll go with you, RJ, first, and kind of get your take on that, and then go ahead, Bill.
I think as far as marginalizing the Patriots' accomplishments and maybe Bill Belichick's accomplishments as a head coach, I think Spygate really diminishes that more so than Deflategate, but Deflategate kind of adds fuel to that fire. There's no doubt that Bill Belichick's a great head coach. I'm not taking anything away from him, but he's always going to have that little asterisk on his legacy because when you're filming someone else's practice to try to steal their sideline signals, that's a bad thing that tugs at the integrity of the game. As far as Tom Brady goes, deflating footballs, yeah, it's a bad thing, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't tarnish his legacy at all, as far as I'm concerned.
In my mind, the answer is no. Whether people can say I'm biased or not, but I mean Brady won his 3 Super Bowls, his first, coming off of a Drew Bledsoe injury. Let's just throw him in there, and he was basically a rookie. It was his second year, but this is his first time starting. And then the other 2 Super Bowls came after that. He went to 2 other ones and lost them. One being an undefeated season. So I mean, maybe if he lost the other ones, we wouldn't be talking about it as much, obviously. But I mean, and every quarterback has done something, whether it's illegal or illegal to the balls. Like RJ said earlier, every quarterback likes their balls a specific way. They like how they feel. Brady has come out and said he likes it exactly at 12.5 or whatever. And if the balls were different at that first half of that Colts game, then the second half they were totally perfect because that's when the refs checked them, and they won 28-0 in that half. And then they went on to the Super Bowl to win fair and square thanks to Malcolm Butler. And Brady was the MVP for a reason. He shredded that Legion of Boom defense. And with Bill Belichick, I mean, before he came to the Patriots, he actually had a tough outing in the NFL with Cleveland and the Jets. But Robert Kraft, had faith in him, and Brady he did it almost every time he won it with different personnel. He basically had the likes of Deion Branch and he had a good defense all the time, but offensively he didn't really have a lot of people. And I just think that shows a lot on the coaching and the game plans and Brady's skill set as a whole. So I don't think, but people are always going to be like, DeflateGate or whatever. And I think from now on, everybody outside of New England is going to have an asterisk on the New England Patriots and Tom Brady.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be something that is almost a prevailing retort for and when you're talking with people at the bar or wherever, if you're a Patriots fan, it's like how can you really say that they didn't deserve the Super Bowls that they won, the playoff games that they won, the MVP trophies, that so on and so forth, all the different accolades that they've accomplished as a team. You cannot with a straight face tell me that they did not earn those things on the field. Yes, is there some questions as to whether or not they played by the rules and did things the right way? Sure, but I think it's at least with Deflategate and probably and with Spygate too, because there's been even more information that kind of has come out with Spygate when Robert Kraft and Belichick were talking about it. Belichick said, or Robert Kraft asked him, did it help you at all? Belichick said, not one bit. And Kraft was like, hey, you're basically an airhead. What was the point of all that? If it gave you no advantage whatsoever on the field, then what was the point? And so I think that that really the asterisk it'll exist, but honestly, if you pay attention to the game and you watch enough football, especially in the NFL, you realize that the Patriots are, they are this generation's San Francisco 49ers. They are this generation's Pittsburgh Steelers. They rule the 2000s, and it's for a reason. It's not because they cheated. It's because they've got perhaps the greatest head coach in the history of football and arguably the best quarterback in the history of football. So those things I think should hold precedence when we're comparing teams and we're looking back at the Deflategate and the Spygate eras. Sure, it's a black eye and it's not the most pleasant thing to look at if you're a Pats fan, but I think you really have to kind of check yourself when you start saying, hey, Patriots didn't deserve this, or they won the Super Bowls because they cheated. I don't think it really helped them out that much when you look at it in the whole grand scheme of things.
Real quick, people are coming out saying that this Super Bowl they should vacate it, and people and I've got a friend that's a season ticket holder. He's saying that he agrees with it. So it's not just people outside of New England. Some people do. They're like, I've put money, emotions into this team, and they cheat, and they should be vacated. And it's just, man, you're obviously not a fan of football.
Well, and and maybe RJ, you jump in on this one too. I feel like that there's just it's not that cut and dry. It's not that black and white when you look at the situation. I mean, yeah, okay, they cheated, but it's just like the Atlanta Falcons were pumping in crowd noise, and the Cleveland Browns were sending illegal text messages to the sidelines from the front office.
Well, and here's this: how many natural grass surface teams out there manipulate the playing field based on the team they're playing week to week.
Right. Exactly. No, that's a great point.
Do they overwater? Do they underwater? Do they let that grass get a little too high? Do they cut it super short? I mean, all that manipulates the play on the field just as much as a deflated football.
Right. Yeah, if not more. Yeah.
And here's the thing. Football is always going to be a game of trying to get that competitive edge, more so than just about any other sport out there. Just look at the play on the offensive and defensive line. You know, they have holding penalties, but you cannot watch one play in the NFL where there are not offensive linemen holding defensive linemen. It's just a matter of what degree the referees, what latitude the referees give them. I mean, that's what NFL is. It's who's the best cheater, quite honestly, in a lot of senses. And, you know, it's funny to say that, but there's a lot of truth to that, too, because, you know, I remember playing in college, we would adjust the size spikes we wore based on the surface we were playing on.
And that's the other thing. It's like, you know, how far do we really want to take these things when we're looking at, you know, what is legal, what is not legal within the confines of the game? It's you know, we could sit here and we could nitpick all day, and it's just like at the end of the day, it's not the difference is that it's going to make is marginal at best. It's probably going to be insignificant. So
well, and then here's another thing I'd like to just throw out there. Where's the NFL's culpability in this DeflateGate scandal? Because you can't tell me in any other sport where the home team is allowed to handle the game balls right before the game.
Right. Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yep.
What? You're the NFL. This is the AFC Championship game, and you don't have an NFL personnel, equipment person as the one who's officially handling those footballs?
Absolutely crazy, isn't it?
I mean, that to me, it's like, you know, they want to push this off and push the blame. Of course, these guys are going to try to gain a competitive edge. I get it. I understand it. That's competitive athletes. You know, everyone's always trying to look to get that little bit of edge. There's, as great as a lot of these guys are out there, there's not a whole lot of integrity in professional sports. I mean, there are millions of dollars at stake. That's where the leagues have to take responsibility for upholding the integrity of the game. And I think it's funny how they want to hammer down on the Patriots, but they don't want to accept any responsibility for allowing this to happen by letting a team's equipment manager handle the balls before the game.
Yeah, and do you have any kind of final thoughts on as far as that goes, Bill?
I mean, no, I totally agree with them. You know what would make it better? Have one or two balls per team and have the NFL handle them from before the game all the way up until kickoff and then after the game. I don't understand. Like, it's their protocol and what they did pregame is largely overlooked here. It was just unbelievable on how they even, when they knew about the issue of it all, when the Colts emailed them, oh, we'll take care of it maybe at halftime, not before the game. It's just, it shows, you know, the integrity of the NFL really when it comes to handling those situations.
Yeah. Right before we wrap things up here, we got a few more minutes, but I just want to, you know, ask you guys, as far as the impact on the field in the first 4 games of next season. At this point, it looks like the Patriots are going to be without Tom Brady. They've got some games in there that, you know, it's early in the season. You never know how it's going to shake out. They got to play Dallas. They got to play Jacksonville. They kind of get a kind of a nice mixture of teams that they're going to be playing against as far as talent level there. With Jimmy Garoppolo coming into that, stepping into that starting role as we expect, what should we expect from Jimmy Garoppolo in these first 4 games? Do we think that he's going to be prepared? Is it going to have an impact necessarily on what the Patriots do offensively? What are you guys' impressions of that? Bill, you go first, and then we'll wrap it up with RJ.
I think if Brady's appeal doesn't go, and he is all 4 games, let's just say all 4 games, I honestly think it doesn't impact the Patriots. Obviously, it does. It's Tom Brady. It's the greatest quarterback ever, not playing. But the Belichick is the greatest coach on game planning and figuring out the opponent's team weakness on offense and defense. He's mostly a defensive-minded coach, so I think he's going to have a game plan in set for every week Brady is out based on Garoppolo's strengths and the opponent's weaknesses, and making Garoppolo be the best he can be based on whatever game plan he has. I think their schedule is they open up against Pittsburgh without Le'Veon Bell. I'm pretty sure he's suspended for the first couple of games. I might be wrong about that, but I think he is. And their defense,
Yeah.
yeah, and then their defense is tarnished, so that's up in the air. I think the Pats are still favored in Vegas even without Brady, which is crazy. And then they have I think Jacksonville or Buffalo week 2, 3, vice versa. Those are two pretty. Buffalo always plays this tough divisional game, and then Dallas. To think going 2-2 is not crazy to think, and they were 2-2 this year, and being the fourth week blown out by Kansas City, and then they pretty much ran the table, and except for Green Bay, and won the Super Bowl. So Belichick is a great game plan coach. And I think he will do everything to get Garoppolo ready, get the defense ready, and to go 2-2 is definitely not a failure. And they were like I said, 2-2 last year, and they won it all. So I think they'll be ready to go.
Garoppolo, it'll be interesting to see him play, but all I can think about is Matt Castle went 11-5 when Tom Brady tore his ACL. That's all you need to know about Jimmy Garoppolo. If Matt Castle can go 11-5 as a starter with the Patriots, sure, different personnel, but Bill Belichick, same type of personnel groupings. I don't see how there couldn't be at least a modicum of success to have the team in good shape. I mean, they definitely won't be 0-4 when Tom Brady comes back. So, Bill Belichick is a great game planner and a great coach, and I don't see the Chiefs on the the Pats schedule. So
Most definitely. Well, it'll definitely be interesting to see things play out. I think, if anything, the fact that the Patriots have kind of been in this situation before when Brady went down with a knee injury, Belichick knows how to handle that situation. Really, the Patriots way in general gives you a lot of confidence in thinking that they can navigate at least those first 4 games without too much of an issue. They are still going to be immensely talented. They're still going to be the New England Patriots. That's not going to change. So, great discussion this week, guys. Thanks again for your takes on everything, and Bill, thank you for joining us this week in place of Josh.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I really appreciate letting me come on and get a platform for this, because it's very deep. It hits me hard here, so I appreciate it.
Well, a very unique perspective, being a New Englander and a Patriots fan. So it was great to have you, RJ. Thanks again, and thanks to all of you listening and watching. We will be back next week with a new set of panelists, perhaps, and topics of discussion for sure. So until next time, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.